Welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership IGB. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking, please. As members are aware, Appendices 2 and 3 for Item 12, the Angus Carer Strategy, were not issued to members in line with Standing Order 5.1, which says at least 5 working days prior to the meeting. However, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 3.5b, and as Chair of this meeting, I determine that the appendices have been issued to members in sufficient time to consider their contents and determine that they be considered in conjunction with report number IGB 60/23. I would also advise that a request for a deputation has been received from Kathleen Blythe in respect of item 11 daycare report, and we will come back to this request in due course. So if we go to the agenda, first of all, apologies, please.
Yes, there's apologies from Catherine Lindsay, Nikki Worrell and Emma Fletcher. And we've got Peter Davidson, Councillor Lois Speed and Peter Jury, members of the board attending remotely, and there's various other officers also attending and members.
Super, thank you. And I know we've got Kirsty Lee here in subbing for Catherine Lindsay. Thanks, Kirsty. Okay. So item 2 on the agenda, any declarations of interest and statements of transparency. So members are reminded that in terms of the code of conduct of members of devolved public bodies, it's their responsibility to make decisions whether to declare an interest in any item on this agenda and whether to take part in consideration of that matter. Any declarations? No? Okay, thank you very much. And the request for the deputation. This request has been received from Mrs Kathleen Blythe, Centre Manager at the Deirdre Knight Centre, Forfar, in relation to item 11, the daycare report. With approval of the committee, Kathleen will also present the other 3 voluntary daycare centres from Kirriemuir, Brechin and Montrose. Do members agree to hear the deputation? Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And in order to ease things for everyone, I would propose at this stage, and in terms of Standing Orders 3.5, I'd like to move that we vary the order of business and deal with item 11 following the deputation. Is this also agreed, please? Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. So that's good news. And I would also remind members that in terms of Standing Order 12.5, any member of the board may put any relevant questions to the deputation, but cannot express any opinion until after the deputation has withdrawn. Okay? And the deputation receives 10 minutes to address the meeting, followed by questions. So if Kathleen and Irene Mitchell would like to come up to those seats there. Thank you very much. And as discussed, there's 10 minutes. And once you're settled down, we'll let you know when 10 minutes starts. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Oh. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak to everyone today. I am here on behalf of the 4 voluntary daycare centres in Angus, the Deirdre Knight Centre in Forfar, the Adams Centre in Montrose, and the Dalhousie Centre in Brechin, and of course Kirriemuir Daycare Centre. We are here today, along with some of our colleagues and centre members, to express our deep concern about the recent review of daycare centres in Angus. This has been our 3rd such review in 10 years, and the previous reviews did not result in any recommendations. The voluntary daycare centres have all been around in Angus now for approximately 35 years plus, and have had good working relationships with Angus Council and the partnership. We are managed by volunteers. Without them, we could not exist. daycare centres are non-profit making and depend on our volunteer committees to run these centres, many of whom still work within our local towns but still find time to dedicate to our centres. I cannot stress how much the volunteers from our committees and or the ones that come to support us with our daily activities do for us. The daycare review that started in November 2021 has been really challenging, and the overall feeling from the centre's managers and our committees is that it has been far from partnership working. The review was conducted at a time when everyone was already under immense pressure with trying to build our services after COVID. The review was not consistent as we had a change in lead throughout the review. We feel that it has been far from partnership working and that the people driving this review lacked knowledge and understanding in daycare services. Changing the system from grant funding to tendering will make us unsustainable. In fact, it was written into the minutes of the Daycare Centre Review on the 25th of November 2022 that it would be costly for us to go into tendering. At this very same meeting, the managers also expressed their voices and said about our concerns about tendering, but this was not minuted in those minutes. The daycare staff and members are extremely worried about the possible loss of our services. Widening the Commission framework to include all other community day services. We are the only daycare centre services that are independently and registered and inspected by the Scottish Care Commission, which means by placing someone vulnerable at one of our daycare centres, you are doing so in the knowledge that they are in a safe environment with highly trained staff who are checked for their suitability along with our volunteers to ensure they are safe to work in such an environment. Self-funding has opened opportunities for people that may not have been able to attend for many reasons, but due to our regulations, we could not be competitive or sustainable with self-funding or spot purchasing alone. Daycare centres are not money-making ventures. The numbers stated in the report are incorrect, as the centres were full pre-pandemic and some of us having waiting lists. We feel that the numbers stated are misleading and show an untrue picture of how popular and full our services are and have become. We have worked so hard to build our centres back up, and it's been difficult with the effects of COVID. We have all diversified into different areas in different ways, and for example, some of us have opened up to a different scope of members. We have increased our private members. One of the daycares run a charity shop to help boost their funds. We all do fundraising throughout the year. We've all tried to raise our profiles within our local communities, and some of us have been through rebranding. We cover, between the 4 daycares, 375 places in our centre per week. That makes 1,805 hours of care that we provide. This would be a huge burden to the partnership if we do not survive. Thank you for listening to me, and I'd like to hand you over to Irene. Irene has a few statements from some of our service users.
Hi, and thanks for listening to us. I could have brought a book of statements here today, but I've brought this one because I think what this member has said to me highlights the need for services, that we provide. So this is what this person has said to me. I live on my own and would have no company or anyone to talk to if I couldn't come to the centre. It encourages me to make an effort to do things. I have made new friends and met up with old friends. I don't want to lose the art of conversation. The centre helps me to keep in touch with others, socially interact, my happy-go-lucky self. It gives me the will to live and brightens my day. I enjoy talking to people and it gets me out and about. I've been to the cinema and also been shopping, things I can't do on my own. It's brought me out of depression, me a new lease of life. but most importantly, it stopped me drinking. It also provides a support mechanism for me. If I didn't have the centre to go to, I wouldn't be able to get out and about, and I could possibly slip back into my old ways.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well within time, so appreciated. I'm going to open it up to questions from the board, but I have one to kick off, and it might help board members. Could you maybe describe a bit about the profile of people who use your centres? And you mentioned you've widened it out a bit, and if you could maybe explain what you mean by that, that would be helpful. Thanks.
So for many years we were classed as older people daycare. We were only allowed anybody over 65. Now we're classed as adult daycare, which means technically anybody over the age of 18. So yeah, we have, my youngest client is 30 and my oldest client at the moment is 96.
Super, thank you very much. Any questions for Kathleen or Irene? Oh, Tracy.
Thank you. I haven't worked this before. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it was just a question of what you mentioned about partnership working, and you said that you didn't feel it had been done with a partnership approach. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit and explain, what your perspective was on that. Thanks.
Yeah, at the time when the review was conducted, we weren't really sure why this was brought about, and we kept asking questions. Why are they doing this review? What is it trying to achieve? We never really understood the scope of it, and I asked from the very go, why was this happening and what were we trying to achieve from it? And throughout the meetings, the other ladies will tell you, it's been felt very much like us against the partnership, that there's been no come and go. When we've had issues and brought issues to the table, they've been cast aside. It's own agenda that they've needed to follow, and it's not felt like partnership working at all. I don't know if you want to say anything.
I think from the word go, we were always told it was not a cost-cutting exercise.
Okay, thank you. And Peter Davidson, who's online.
Yes, thank you, and I hope you can all hear me. I haven't tested the mic as yet. Thank you both for your deputation and also for the work that you all continue to do in this area. I noticed on the report that it says that 31% of respondents advise the cost of attending daycare is too expensive. Now, clearly you're not-for-profit organisations, so I'm assuming you only charge it at the rate that you need to do so to keep the projects sustainable. Is your fear that if this model were to be adopted, that the cost of attending daycare centre would have to increase somewhat for those even further? Thanks.
Hi, thank you. There are two streams into daycare. One, you can now pay privately, and two, you can get through the council, through the partnership, you can perhaps get funding. So at the moment it costs something in the region of £47 to come through for a council place. The worry is that, yeah, it doesn't really truly affect the cost of a daycare place anyway. 5 hours at daycare for £47 is not a lot of money. You paying staff and stuff above that. If you were to look at home care, you're talking in the region about £20 an hour. So that was one of the things that we had brought the meetings, was the true cost of daycare. But if they were to put that cost up, how would people pay for that?
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Does anyone else have any questions? George? That's fine. We'll take that during the paper. Thank you. Okay, if there are no more questions, could I just thank you very much. I appreciate you all coming here today and sharing your message. If you could move back to the gallery seats, we'll take the paper. Thank you. And if we could ask Eunice, and welcome to Eunice in our first meeting as the Deputy Chief Officer. Thanks, Eunice. And Eunice will take us through item 11, which is the daycare report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to bring this report for your consideration today. I am pleased to share this report as it is a culmination of considerable work to progress and review the landscape of daycare services in Angus. As noted in the daycare provision is an integral part of our overall care provision in Angus and helps support people to remain at home for longer, and our aim is to build a sustainable model for the future that is equitable and fair and gives opportunities for all services to build models that are able to meet the needs of the local population, that are affordable, and the opportunity for providers to increase the number of self-funders at competitive rates. I would like to emphasise that we do value our relationships with our daycare providers who have come here today to express their views on the matter, and that is very much appreciated. I will come back to additional comments as I go through what I want to say. You will see from the paper the consultation and the outcomes and feedback are noted. Members will see from the report that there is a reduction in the number here, and I appreciate we've heard that some of the figures may not be accurate, but I think there is general agreement that the numbers attending daycare have reduced post the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've also had mixed feedback about the current models offered. And we need, in partnership with our providers, to work towards a more sustainable model that better suits the needs of the people in Angus. In the meantime, please be assured we are committed to working with our current providers to support them to move forward to a more competitive model and marketplace, whilst offering financial support in this transitional period in line with our contractual obligations. We know this is causing some concern, but we are supporting this by regular engagement, support with resources that could help with tendering processes, and we will ensure that our daycare providers are kept very much abreast of developments. We are already reviewing our monitoring processes in order to ensure that we do get value for money, but also to support our providers with next steps and to ensure they begin to upscale themselves with the expectations that services need to be outcome focused, fit to meet the needs of the people of Angus, and affordable for the future. In terms of moving forward, I am pleased to advise of this new direction of travel in developing a commissioning framework for daycare services, which we wish to take forward in line with the period of our current strategic commissioning plan. As demographics change, we are seeing more complex needs in older people, emerging needs in the younger population. We've already heard today that numbers in the daycare centres have gone from, I think, 30 to 96 as the current age group. And the requirement to provide services is becoming more focused. We are keen as a partnership to include all community day services in our commissioning framework. Please be assured we will do extensive engagement as part of this work and ensure our current providers are included and be very much involved as we progress matters. In response to the deputation, I would like to add that I apologise that the reviews took as long as they did with no clear outcome. I do accept, and it is referenced in the report, that there are a number of reviews started, not completed, and this is the first review that has been completed, and I can understand frustrations around that. We are really keen that we do work in partnerships with yourselves. Unfortunately, the service leader who was leading this work is on holiday, and I'm sure if she was here today, she would be able to advise of the amount of effort that has gone in to working with the providers, to talking through issues and challenges, and trying to reduce concerns. We're also aware that we have been trying to support with tendering ideas and options, sharing information, and working with our procurement colleagues. Therefore, I would encourage you all to approve the 4 recommendations in my report as outlined. I'm asking you to acknowledge the work undertaken in respect of the review, agree that a commissioning framework for daycare services developed during the period of our strategic commissioning plan, that we widen the development of the framework to include all daycare services across Angus, and we maintain the current levels of funding for each daycare provider whilst reducing the number of places being commissioned to allow the providers to increase the number of self-funding places in order to build a more sustainable business model during the period of the current contractual framework. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eunice. Does anyone have any questions? George?
Thank you. I'm trying to get a picture of what this means for an individual. If I'm a self-funder, I would agree then with a provider for a place in daycare at a cost of, is it 40 something pounds, someone said?
That's the current cost.
Yes.
That's the current cost. As part of the framework, that will have to be looked at, depending on, I think one of the challenges at the moment is that we at the moment fund place, but we don't fund complexity of need. So some people maybe need 2-to-1 care, some people, have a number of people looking after them, etc. So we need to be able to looking at sort of more bespoke models so that we're able to ensure that people's needs are met in daycare and we finance it appropriately.
Thank you. I'm looking at the alternative to that. If, now keep me right here, it's a long time since I've looked at anything like this. If daycare is part of a care package, which has been assessed, then there would be a charge for that in the charging policy. Or is it standalone and I'll pay at the moment, the whole £47? Or is it in a sense subsidised then, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure that's a level of operational detail. Oh, sorry.
It was just the mic.
Oh, sorry. Is it on now? So I'm not very familiar with this system yet. I'm not sure that level of operational detail, but I can certainly come back to you on that.
The reason I ask is obviously to get a clearer picture of what it means for an individual out in the community. I think that's really quite important because it could be, and this is just wild figures, that if it's part of a care package and I've been assessed for it, my contribution could be £20, we'll see, for that and other things. But if I have to arrange it myself or commission it myself or go and get it myself and it's £47, that's quite a difference, isn't it?
So I think what we'd be looking to do is do an extensive engagement. What do the people of Angus actually want and need to help them to stay at home? So we have got our daycare providers, as we've already heard from. We've got other daycare options. We've got in-house options, external options. There's a variety of opportunities. We're also seeing quite a difference in the number of people that are requiring intensive support. So as part of this engagement, before we introduce the framework, that's all the discussions we'll be having with people. What we don't want to be doing is disadvantaging people. What we're trying to do is create better opportunities for people, a variety of options that are available for them, so you can choose what is suitable for your needs, what is suitable for your budget, what is free, what is chargeable. That will all be explored as part of our framework going forward. So the idea and the direction is to try and make it more individually centred, person centred, and then you can choose from the variety what's available that you would want to attend.
I don't want to hog it, but on the statement that the funding for daycare centres will remain the same, how long for? It doesn't seem to say forever.
No, so if you look at recommendation 4, it says during the period of the current contract. So that's what we're asking to be approved today. But as I've already said, we do value providers. We want them to support them to move to more of a business model. That's why we are offering the funding. But at the moment, we are funding placements that are not actually being taken up, although I appreciate the numbers in the report are not accurate. We overall know the numbers have gone down. So we are working with services to make sure that they are financially viable, supporting them to look at other ways of getting funding in order to be sustainable. So we are very much committed to that, but we're also trying to move to a more sustainable model in the long term as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just pick up on that and picking up what the deputation said around changing scope, profile and needs? Obviously, it's going to be wider than previous positions that we've had. If the person's pathway through different levels of support could be a graphic or a number of graphics within any strategic commissioning framework that we see, to allow us to visualise exactly what George was asking there, and it's clear for people to see that what the options are. And I'm sure it's not going to be easy to produce a graphic, but I think those things are actually quite helpful to be able to see someone's pathway through different services, through various levels of need, and we can all get the benefit of that. Would that be possible?
More than happy to do
Great,
that.
that'd be
That'll
good.
have to come as part of our engagement.
Well,
as
absolutely,
we develop the framework
absolutely.
And we hear what the people of Angus want.
Like,
Sorry, I think, yes, more than happy to do that. I think that will be developed as part of our engagement when we hear what the people of Angus want and need, and working with our providers. And we're aware that there are also other emerging services that are coming into Angus. We'd want them to be involved in part of the framework as well, making it transparent, making it fair and equitable for all providers to have this opportunity. And then it holds us accountable for how we deliver our services and commission for different options for people.
okay, thank you. And Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm really concerned about this report. I'm concerned around the two different accounts. So Mrs McClellan's account of events and the representatives that have done the deputation, very different. And I think it's really concerning that the two representatives don't feel that they've been treated as partners, equal partners, and that really they've had a say at the table and during those meetings. I think there has been an agreement or an acknowledgement that there is information within this report that's not accurate. I think we've been here many times before with regards to, reports like this, where we have questioned, what is the motivating factor? What is driving this? It absolutely has to be about the person, the individual requiring daycare. For me, I don't think that it can be driven by cost. Care should not be about cost. I would like a little bit more information with regards to the fourth recommendation in terms of keeping the level of funding the same, but increasing the amount of self-funded places, and just what impact will that have on individuals, especially those that perhaps are funded. Will there still be the same opportunities for them? And also, if someone perhaps does need, maybe a 2-to-1 ratio, does that mean that those that might actually have the greatest needs will not have the same opportunity? I didn't find it was very clear within the equality impact statement in terms of, who is likely to be most impacted by these proposals.
Thank you, Lewis. Eunice.
Thank you, Counts. As I've already said, I think that there have been issues around the number of daycare reviews that have taken place, and I think it is really positive that this daycare review has come to conclusion. All meetings with the daycare providers are minuted, and these minutes are shared. And I've seen some of these minutes myself, and I'm sure the deputation would agree that there are minutes of these meetings, so there is an opportunity to challenge what's been said or what's been agreed in sort of formal processes. In terms of costs, what we're trying to do with moving forward to a commission framework is to recognise the complex needs that people have. So rather than paying for a place for one individual, what we're saying is if you've got complex needs, there'll be an opportunity to have a higher cost that would be involved in that. And if it was a funded place, we would recognise that people need more of a resource, and it would cost us more to provide that funded place as opposed to somebody who comes and is fairly independent and comes for a day and doesn't have a huge level of input. So I think the plan is to make this more sustainable for providers, and that was one of the bits of feedback that we had before, was that our current model is not fair in terms of the funding arrangements. I think I've had some feedback that for some of the current resources, and I think that was said today, that they have changed their models, they're increasing their independent funders that are coming along, looking at different options to meet the needs of the local population. What we have seen within Angus is that the number of people attending daycare in the older people population has changed following the pandemic, and there's not the same level of demand. We know that we have an increase in younger people coming through that are requiring our services, and we need to adapt accordingly. And it's really good to hear today that some of the providers are doing likewise. So the plan for trying to have this commission framework is to be much more flexible, to be responsive to the people of Angus, and we will do that very much in conjunction with what people want and need by our engagement, and we'll bring something with infographics, etc., back when we're at that place. In terms of the final recommendation, I think that was your further comment, is that we are wanting to continue to fund and support the daycare providers at the moment as they work with the plans and agendas that we're trying to take forward during the period of their current contracts. And as their businesses become more successful and they become more sufficient, then obviously we will have to look at that and have these discussions through the monitoring meetings. It has been referenced in the report that since 2000 we haven't really had a focus on value for money or outcome focus, and that's what we need to do. We've got responsibility with public money that we have to do this, and that's one of the plans to try and do that, to work in partnership, to work collaboratively, but to make sure that we are getting the right outcome for the people that need these services. Thank you.
Thank you. And David Mackenzie and then Hayley Mearns. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. There has been very little reference either in the report or in the conversation so far about the impact and benefit of daycare services to carers for whom the respite function of day services. And I should declare an interest as a previous beneficiary of day services in making this comment. But on a general basis, the fact that there is a known respite facility and that carers can plan around that, work around that, I don't think can be overstated. And I would like to see some reference to that aspect of it, because it's not just about individuals who are assessed as needing day service or those who choose to self-fund. There are carers who require respite services and benefit from respite services that need to be rated there as well. And I've referenced that. I also share concern that Councillor Speed has referenced about if we're not sure about the quality of the information we've got in front of us, then I would be concerned about making the decision on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mackenzie, for your comments. I think in terms of carers, that carers will be part of the engagement as well. I think they were part of the engagement when we did the engagement previously, although I appreciate that that's not been referenced in the report. One of the things that we had feedback about, for example, was that some carers wanted Kinloch Centre to open on a Saturday, and that's something that we've accommodated. So part of the wider engagement will be to look at, what do carers need as well as individuals? Is it a Monday to Friday service? Is it a sort of, weekend service? So all these things will be part, which hopefully will benefit carers. I think that there was a lot of work done looking at the numbers, and we rely on daycare services to provide the numbers for the report. I think we do accept that we can't be 100% accurate, but that they are generally correct in terms of this was the numbers and down. So the principles around the numbers are correct, that at one point we had a very healthy attendance at daycare, for an older people's population, and things have gone down. I do accept from what we heard today that for some of the centres numbers are going up with the new strategy of opening up to other people as an adult daycare centre. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wonder if that's the discrepancy in figures is something that could be picked up after with the centres, just to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date data possible to help inform the next step. So that'll get picked up. Thank you. Hayley.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just, I suppose, just reading through the report and hearing everything that we've heard so far, there's a lot of mention about support to allow the daycare centres or the providers to become more sustainable, and I note that, Eunice, you've mentioned that the partnership are willing to support with that, and I think we're looking at the type of organisation that the daycare centres are, being voluntary organisations. There's certainly probably a larger role that we can be playing in supporting that sustainability in the sector. There's a lot of work that already goes on. I don't feel that we've maybe missed a trick this time round in regards to the review, but moving forward I think we need to note that we've got Voluntary Action Angus as a member of the IGB and a partnership that would be there to support taking the providers forward in a more sustainable outlook, and possibly looking at other options that absolutely we could see that maybe some of the report will be agreed today or not agreed, but actually what are the other options that we've not looked, and there will be alternative funding options and other things that we could kind of delve a bit deeper into.
Thank you very much for your offer I'm struggling with this. Thank you very much for your offer. That's very much appreciated. And I know that an email went out to all the providers for daycare at the moment on the 18th of August, outlining a number of resources that could be accessed, a number of supports, and we'll certainly make sure that Voluntary Action Angus is included going forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Hayley. Anyone else have any questions? Alison.
Building on the point about making sure that carers are included in their needs, I think it is worthwhile considering the needs across the geographical areas of Angus, because the daycare at the moment is focused around 4 big towns in the north. I know that I've lost in Monifieth, we lost a daycare centre several years ago, and it was missed to a certain degree. It's very much valued, and I think it's worthwhile looking within our localities, our locality improvement groups, or our natural communities of care of what else is in the area, and not having a daycare centre Angus-wide approach, which is important, but we find when we look at service-wide that there are differences in localities. I can think of my own area. We've got a lot of elderly people, but not so much poverty, whereas in Kerry you're very isolated and Brechin, and I do understand these needs of these communities are different. So it's just a plea that we get the right thing for localities and not just have a blanket daycare approach. And I very much agree, from my perspective as a GP, the carer respite function is the one that is right up there as the high priority, beyond making sure that the people that are cared for are participating in life and all the other values of daycare. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. And I've literally just this morning sent out an email for all community councils from the Chief Officer at Angus Carer Centre to do more awareness raising out in the more unserved places around carer support. So there's a lot of that work going on there. Thanks. Did you want to come in, Eunice?
I did. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Alison. I think I would add that will definitely be considered about looking at individual approaches for individual areas. For example, we don't have a daycare centre in Arbroath, it's in Carnoustie. We're open on a Saturday, other daycare centres aren't, and that's to do with demand and need. We know that we've had a lot of consultation with people in Arbroath previously about not having a particular resource there and having it in Carnoustie, and that works really well and the feedback is positive. So I think going forward we will be flexible, and we might have to look at smaller resources, larger resources, depending on what people in the area want. So that will be very much considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice. Peter, and then Lois again.
Okay, thanks. Lois was first. You might not be able to see the numbers. Lois, would you like to go?
No, it's okay. On you go, Peter.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, Eunice, thank you very much for the report. It's a really difficult subject. I'm struggling. I'm struggling to support all of the recommendations, with not to jump the gun, but with some of the information that's been provided or questions that have been asked. For not-for-profit organisations like our day centres that provide such a valuable resource, it's troubling times as it is. It's very unsettling, volatile times. I suppose where I'm a little bit torn is around our risk section. It was a question I was going to be asking on another paper, but we undertook as a board a risk appetite development session a good while ago now, and obviously we're quite hopeful that most of the recommendations, all of the recommendations, would be aligned. We were very open to financial risk, the fact that where we need to mitigate risks to patient safety, quality of care, we're quite open to that. We're open to the fact we might need to spend a little bit more money, but where we were very cautious was on the provision of high quality clinical care. And I just wonder if this paper and the recommendations, do you feel, Sandy, whoever else, feels that it's aligned with the risk appetite of the board? Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, do you want?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Peter. I think it's probably worth saying at the outset of this review there wasn't a particular financial target associated with this review. But as we are concluding and seeing this paper, we are obviously entering a period where, in the medium and longer term, we as an IJB have many financial challenges to deal with. Those challenges are all set out in the public papers for today's meeting. So to some extent, we have got difficult choices that we will have to make about across the whole of the IGB, not particularly daycare, but across everything that we're trying to deal with. We do have financial flexibility in the short term, Peter, through a number of the funds. But the financial challenges that are set out in the financial planning paper show that really by the end point of the proposed review period, which goes up to 25-26, this IGB would be facing financial shortfalls of multiple millions of pounds. Any decision that we make would have to be made, if it's been made with a view to the longer term, with a backdrop. So while we may have, if we chose to go down the route, financial flexibilities in the short term, we are operating against a very constrained outcome in the long term. I think you were mentioning the risk appetite and that balancing of our wish to continue delivering high level of care to the public in Angus. Ultimately, at some point, those financial challenges, when we will only have so much money to spread across all our service users. So in terms of individual decisions we make, we are still ultimately constrained by the amount of funding we do have. And in terms of, actually, I'll stop there because I was about to make a point myself, and I was already responding to your question, Peter. Hopefully, Peter, that answers, just gives you some thoughts back on that point.
Okay, thank you. And Lois?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to go back to the points that Alison Clement made, I agree in terms of that involvement of carers and the perhaps positive impact, no doubt, that has on them, as well as the points made around, getting it right for each locality. I do note within the report there is brief mention with regards to the fact that Arbroath doesn't have a daycare resource. And, it says, basically as saying that that's not really a problem. However, there is no evidence within that report to actually demonstrate that, to support and back that statement up. There's no statements from, or not that I can see in terms of from perhaps, the communities within Arbroath. I don't feel that we'll have enough information in here and within this report. I think there's lots of unanswered questions. I think it's not that long ago that as an IGB, that we talked of a previous decision that was taken and that lessons needed to be learned. I propose that we defer this until that, as voting members, we're more fully briefed and informed, and that we can come back with a report that has more information and more detail to be able to enable us to make a better, a more informed decision.
My view at what this paper is doing is allowing our officers to start the work on a commissioning framework, and there will be various stages of updates to this board, and that to hinder it would present some significant challenges in terms of timeline. In recommendation 2, already it's saying, during the period of the strategic commissioning plan 23 to 26, I was actually going to ask if 26 is the delivery point of that, because that is a significant period of time, but there is very weighty engagement to do to that framework. So this paper isn't committing us to a specific outcome at this stage. It is allowing us to go out and engage with providers and people who use the services and carers, and we've taken that point on board around the omission of carers here, that there's nothing in this paper that is a hindrance, I think, to going forward. But I would appreciate anyone else's views on that. Eunice?
Thank you, Chair. That's absolutely correct. We are looking for agreement that this is the way forward, that this would be something we want to develop. And I've tried to stress very much today that engagement. There has been debate around the timeframes for this, but we felt it needed to take a bit of time to do this absolutely properly, to have that extensive engagement with the whole population in Angus, with carers, with staff, with providers, with other organisations that may want to come and develop services in Angus. So we need to do this properly and carefully. So really what we're asking today is a direction of travel, the way forward for daycare provisions in Angus as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was thinking in terms of an update to the IGB to give enough time on the go. When do you think is an appropriate time? And it might be at that stage we could have an informal briefing for IGB members, to see how it's shaping up. But a time scale that isn't too challenging for officers to allow some of that work to get started.
I think with the different pressures and working with procurement colleagues, etc., to get things up and running, I think we're confident to be able to give you a sort of accurate brief by April 2024. We'll have laid out our engagement and communication strategy, we'll have started that work, we'll have started to have discussions around frameworks and what needs to be done and get tighter timelines in place. So I'd be confident by April 24 that we would have something worthwhile and concrete to bring the GB. If that's acceptable.
Okay. Lewis, does that help? Yes? Excellent, thank you very much.
No, I didn't say yes, sorry, apologies. Could I just have more clarity with regards to recommendation 4? Because I can't see how that would have an impact on someone or ultimately on service users if you're keeping the level of funding the same but reducing the number. Sorry, I might maybe reading that wrong, but could I just have some more clarity, please, Ms McClellan?
Thank you, Councillor Speed, for your comments there and your question. So what we're saying is we're asking for agreement that the current levels of funding will remain in place while we're trying to reduce the number of places being commissioned during the lifetime of the current contractual framework. So all providers are on a contract that's reviewed on a regular basis. That is good practice and process. When we do grants, when we do contracts, we have to review them in line with legislative requirements and expectations and standards in our monitoring processes. So we're really just spelling out there what normally would happen anyway. When you get a timeline for review, nothing's guaranteed, but beyond that, you've always got to review and make sure that we are getting value, that the services are providing what they're being asked to provide. What we're saying is that we'll be working with people, and at the moment we wouldn't be reducing the funding because we know that the numbers have gone down, so we are paying for more placements that are actually being taken up, and we're working to help out the resources so that they can remain viable for the future, that they're then developing other aspects of their business while we're continuing the funding during the period of their current contracts. Thank you. Hopefully that answers your question.
Does that help, Lewis?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, George.
I'll say given the explanation a bit more content.
Your mic.
Sorry about that. I would say that given the explanation, I'm a bit more content. There is a 3-year period there that clearly, from what you're saying, we will have an opportunity to revisit this, certainly more than once. So I would like to see, though, if it's at all possible, I mean, I don't know how you would build this in, but if there was information that could be provided not only on the effect to the daycare providers, but to the actual users, the service users. For instance, if Mary was this and this happened, the type of thing. I mean, I think that would be certainly helpful to me. And of course, what the effect on the providers. So those two parts.
Thank you, Councillor. We're happy to do that. We have put some feedback in the report, but we can certainly do more specific examples, experiences. That's not a problem. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Or Gail would like to.
Sorry, I've been waiting here to come in at the end here. Thank you all for your comments and really fruitful discussion, and thank you also to the deputation for coming along today. I would just like to welcome the committee's support for the recommendations, but I absolutely want to recognise that we do want to do things in partnership, we do want to do things with your engagement. So I will make a promise on behalf of Eunice and the team that are involved that we will try and get that right as far as possible for the future. You've heard Eunice say today that we'll try and do this before April. We'll try and do what Mr Mackenzie was asking about carers' involvement, the more accurate numbers. We'll look at that beyond April of this year, recognising we're coming out of COVID, and also to a number of others. And Peter Davidson was also suggesting the risk appetite and the clinical impact on that. So we will try and work towards that as well. So thank you all for that debate.
Thank you, Gail. Okay, so can I take us to the recommendations, please, on page 102? As previously highlighted, it's recommended that we agree all those recommendations with the added commitment that a further report is coming back to the IGB by the end of April next year as an update. Is everyone happy to go with all of that? Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the deputation. It was really good that you were able to come along today. You are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if not, we will quite understand and not be at all offended if you want to make a sharp exit. Thank you very much. We'll just give people a couple of minutes. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. If we can go back to the agenda, and we are on item 3A, so it's minutes of the previous meeting, which is on page 5 of your combined pack. I'm going to assume that you've read them all. Does anyone have any factual corrections to minutes today? No. In that case, can we approve them? Thank you very much. And then if we go to the action log, is Sandy, are you taking us, or any, Gail is, sorry. Saw the panic in Sandy's face.
Very welcome. Can I draw members' attention to the first action point that's on there regarding the Tayside Primary Care Strategy? Our intention was to have this completed by October. I can confirm that we have a development session coming up next week, but I do think, again, we're being overly ambitious if we think we're going to have done full consultation to enable us to bring us back a report in October. What I would like to suggest to people is that we can perhaps bring a single page report with the progress that we've made following the development of the strategy and with our intention with regard to the communications plan and what we're going to do. That would be okay with members. The good news is, in relation to the internal audit, we have got our Associate Medical Director advert out for consultation, so hopefully we'll be in a position to update you from then. Can I also highlight the overdue items? They are all on target to be addressed in the October IJB minute. And the finance report that's on the last page that's been delayed from June is on the agenda today.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions on the app? No, I would like to make a request.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Elaine Henry.
Elaine, sorry.
I'm just reflecting on that update from about the primary care strategy, and should that perhaps then go from being amber to red if we're exceeding the timelines that we'd already set? I'm just conscious that we're reporting, yes, the other amber ones are coming back in October, but that one is not. Should that perhaps be adjusted?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I wondered if there would be an appetite to see the Algartnership and ADARS update as a presentation, perhaps the annual report as a presentation, given the profile. I think best to see how we're doing. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I also say that a question arose this morning at our audit committee regarding that. I just haven't had an opportunity to discuss with the team regarding that as well.
So moving on now to the Chair's assurance report from the Audit Committee, and then following that we'll have another Chair's assurance report. And before we go into those, I'd just like to say how helpful I found those. I think in previous years, board members may well have felt quite detached from the strategic planning group, but this really brought it home. I've found them both very helpful, and I just wondered, first of all, does the Chair of the Audit Committee have anything he wishes to say to introduce it? Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, this is the first Chair's report of its kind, so if I can spend a couple of minutes just introducing it. The IGB decided previously that to include a Chair's report with all the board subcommittees, and the intention was to give a high-level assurance that the relevant committee, in this case the Audit Committee, was performing as it should, to put it quite succinctly, I think. The actual minutes themselves are appended as an appendix. So, yes, it kind of does provide an executive overview, if you like, without having to delve into the detail of the audit report proper. So basically we've just tried to highlight how we are progressing items against the work plan meeting by meeting, and that'll be done on an ongoing basis, and then any exceptions to the work plan are detailed in the report itself. Excuse me. We also monitor risk management and directions issued by the IGB. These are managed obviously by other relevant forums. Also included in the high-level assurance report is key decisions made by the Audit Committee. And finally, in the last paragraph, we've tried to highlight the intense activity that's typically undertaken at this time of year to close out the audited annual accounts and produce all the associated exhibits for the IGB auditors to sign off. So that's just by way of introduction. So if there's any questions on the report itself, I'm sure me or Sandy can answer them, or if anybody, you've already mentioned that this find is helpful, but if anybody thinks of any way we can improve the content of the Chair's report, I would welcome those. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It's very much appreciated. Anyone have any questions on either the Chair's assurance report or the minutes? No, we're happy to. Oh, Sandy, do you want to come in?
Sorry, I've got a comment rather than a question. Is that okay to go? Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on the final point that Andrew's made, which is about, refers to section 4 of this report, where it talks about the work the Audit Committee does towards, at the year-end process. And ideally this afternoon I would have been able to inform the Audit Committee, the IGB meeting this afternoon, that we'd signed off our annual accounts. As a matter of just kind of keeping everybody up to date, I would have been able to do that, but we haven't actually been able to do that this morning. All the papers have gone through the Audit Committee reasonably satisfactorily, or in fact completely satisfactorily, but we did have what I hope is a procedural hiccup, just with the timing of some information that was coming in from a third party. So it has delayed the sign off of the accounts, but we don't think there's any issues there at all. The auditors are pretty comfortable with that, and we hope to have that all resolved within a week. So that's just a wee update for everybody.
Thank you. Yes, I was party to that hiccup, so thanks for the update. That will smooth itself out. So if everyone's happy to note that, yes, if we can move on to the Chair's Assurance Report Planning Group, and that will be Jill Galloway. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm really pleased to bring the first Chair's Assurance Report for strategic planning. I think as part of the work that we're doing to enhance the reporting around strategic planning and the delivery of our commissioning plan, this is one of the areas that we were looking to bring, along with a revamped delivery plan progress update at meetings. So this will the IGB to see progress at a meeting rather than twice or 3 times a year. We'll also continue to report against the work plan and progress, and it will give us the opportunity to highlight any exceptions, good or bad, at any future IGB meetings whereby members may want another report to come forward. So,
thank you very much. Particularly like the section on horizon scanning as a standard there. It's really helpful. Anyone have any questions or comments? Could I have a nod if you're finding these reports helpful? Yes, lots of nods around the table. So thank you very much for those. I'm looking forward to seeing those as they come forward. And if we can move on to item 4, which is the timetable of meetings. I don't know about you, but I haven't got next year's diary yet, but I think they'll all be fine. I'm happy to approve those and note them in your diary for next year. That's marvellous. Thank you very much. And the next item is item 5, appointments. And this is a procedural paper, really. Everyone will have read it, but we're being asked that we note the appointment of Dr. Andrew Thompson as the GP rep, replacing Dr. Richard Humble. And in terms of that recommendation, note that Dr. Andrew Thompson is no longer appointed proxy member for Angus. That has been addressed previously in another paper at an earlier meeting. So everyone happy to note those? Thank you very much. And the next one is item 6, which is the Audit Committee's annual report. And if I can throw it open to Andrew again first, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. As its name suggests, the report outlines the activity throughout the year of the Audit Committee. It reminds us as to the purpose of the Audit Committee and reports all of the work plan actions completed, meeting by meeting. There's a section on long-standing local governance issues, which are challenging and still remain fully unresolved, but their incremental progress is being made all the time on these, and hopefully we'll see these reducing in the next year. These have not considered by the Chief Officer and yourself as IGB Chair to impact the adequacy and efficiency of our governance arrangements. There's also, in the annual report, there is usually a review of the Audit Committee membership, which has been relatively stable recently, although there is a dynamic element to it as people come and go and move on to other jobs or leave or join. So all brought up to date, up to speed through development sessions and individual sessions with the Chief Finance Officer. So that's all I want to say. I don't know if Sandy wants to say something in addition.
Sandy in? No? No? Marvellous. Thank you very much. Are you enjoying being the chair? Yes. Good. I loved it too. Sorry, we're geeks. So, does anyone have any questions on the Audit Committee's annual report? No, everyone. I'm not seeing anyone on screen either. Okay, so good job. So we're asking you to approve the recommendations. We've considered the report and acknowledged the input provided to the Audit Committee from Audit Committee members and those supporting the Audit Committee, including the legal and democratic services and the IGB's internal and external auditors, and a particular thanks to Sandy for all his hard work there and to Andrew as chair. Everyone okay with that? Thank you very much. That's great news. And it's over to Sandy now for the finance report, is item 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the comments about the Audit Committee, and hopefully if we are ever looking for new members of the Audit Committee at some point in the future, just bear those last 3 or 4 minutes in mind. Yes, this is the first finance report for the 2023-24 year. It's in the format that most of you will now be familiar with. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail. I appreciate we've got another financial planning report further on the agenda. In summary, Chair and everybody, what we see is we have a well-documented backdrop of significant financial challenge, and beyond the things that we can quantify, many risks that are difficult to quantify, a list that seems to be increasing by the week. But against that backdrop, we are still seeing a number of underspends that are, as described in this paper. And those underspends mean we are continuing to report at the moment an underspend in the IJB's projections for this financial year. The details set out in here, I'll not go through it. We have flagged up a couple of areas that we're looking for to be considered in the recommendations. One's regarding primary care risk sharing, and one is an ongoing issue regarding mental health financial accountabilities. They're both described in the report, but the mental health financial accountabilities issue is one that members will be familiar with. We had a number of discussions about that in the last financial year. I think the third or the final point I just want to highlight, Chair, is that not dissimilar to things that we have spoken about at the Audit Committee today, there are a number of kind of long-standing financial governance issues. Andrew's alluded to them in the last few minutes in some of the. We are gradually getting to these, and a number of them built up during COVID. We continue to have new actions that we're trying to address. And it does sometimes feel we're on a bit of a treadmill, but we are gradually making progress with these. See that a wee bit in the final appendix of the paper. But it'll be a lot of more work to get to the bottom of these, because I feel we have quite a lot of remedial financial governance work to do that built up over a number of years. Apart from that, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. George.
Thank you, Chair. It's on Appendix 3. Review of baseline resources, page 76.
Is that? I think that's in the separate financial planning paper. Yeah. Yep. No problem. But thanks for the tip off.
Excellent. Anyone got any more questions or any questions for this particular paper? Oh, yes, there's hands on screen. Is that Peter Drury? Yes. Yes, Peter.
Thank you. A very short question, Sandy. Are our reserves secure, or could they still be retrieved by the government or indeed transferred to one of our...
Thanks, Peter. So there's two kind of aspects to that. Are the Scottish Government like to recover reserves, and then the partner issue? So in terms of the Scottish Government have been reviewing allocations, a number of allocations year on year. I think most of the big remedial work, or well, that's maybe the wrong phrase, the big recovery work has happened already. And we saw particularly significant changes at the start of the last financial year. However, it is still an absolute factor, and it will potentially affect some of the Scottish Government allocations. I think we are getting allocation letters out as we speak. They're coming in now, and I know we're getting towards the end of August, and that feels like a really late period to be getting information about this financial year. But individual parts of the Scottish Government, individual policy departments in the Scottish Government are gradually addressing issues of that type, and some of them are continuing to adjust the funding packages to reflect reserve adjustments. Now, most of that information, most of it, will be already getting communicated through the policy departments directly with service delivery. However, there are a number of points where that communication is not as perfect as we would choose it to be. So there is a lot of the risk has already kind of crystallised, but there are some ongoing areas. I mean, it's probably a more limited group, but there are some ongoing areas where that could be an issue. And we are maybe having to manage our expectations and our aspirations to reflect that. And of course, one of the ways that we can reduce any risk in the future, as we perhaps reach the next financial year end, is to ensure we've done our bit to make sure we've got the funding committed and being spent in any particular year. So it's fair to say there is a lot of the risk has already happened, but there are some residual things that will still be bottomed out as the allocation letters coming from the government. You asked, though, about also risks with partners. And I think one of the things that we will have to do in the year to come, as we did last year, is we have to think about our own financial position as it matters for Angus IJB, but also in the context of the wider system that we operate in. And I think that's something that the board would probably expect to be considering anyway. And it's certainly something that I felt looked at relatively constructively last year. It was a bit early as we were writing these reports at the start of August, particularly with our own accounts not yet signed off, for us to make, to develop thoughts on that. But perhaps by the time we come around to the next IJB, we might have started to look at that. So that's me talking about how we as an IJB may look at that position. There is, of course, the question in terms of how the partners might look at that as well. And I think that they will be looking at their own financial positions and saying, is there ways that, if they've got difficulties in this particular year, is there the ways that the IJB can work constructively with them? So I think I would hope that we can take a constructive approach to this, depending on our own circumstances, and then we'll have what would hopefully be a constructive dialogue with partners. But we haven't got to the point of doing that yet, because we were writing these reports at the start of August, and we hadn't even got our own accounts signed off at the time. So I think that's something that we will have to come back to without exposing ourselves to any undue risk, would be the best way for us to do that. But I would expect to be exploring that by the time we get to our October meeting. Is that okay, Peter?
Excellent, thank you. I've got Chris in the room and Elaine online next. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Sandy, just a couple of questions. You refer on page 50, last paragraph, that the demand for care at home services across all services continues to exceed the available capacity within the partnership. So that's a regular and ongoing theme, and one that I've spoken on probably pretty much every IJB I've been at in the last couple of years. Is that gap in capacity decreasing? Is the gap increasing? And over and above whether it's decreasing or increasing, what initiatives and efforts are the partnership making to solve the issues around capacity, which is predominantly recruitment and retention?
Thanks, Chris. I will pass.
Okay, I was actually, towards the end, I was going to pick up on the underspend on care and assessment, because that underspend reflects unmet needs. So thanks for picking that up.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your question. What I would like to say is that we're doing a significant, sorry, I'm looking at my microphone, not looking at you, so I'm trying to turn this way. So I think we are doing quite a lot of work looking at our unmet need at the moment and making sure that we are targeting the right people and the right resources are going to where they are in greatest need. So we have stepped up an action group looking at unmet need and looking at 4 work streams around eligibility criteria, making sure they've got the right criteria and that the people that need services get services. We're looking at assessments, we're looking at reviews, and we're looking at other things like recruitment, etc. So a lot of work is going around that. We're also doing an exercise in a couple of weeks looking at the people that are at the moment seen to have unmet need, to make sure what is happening with them, what resources are they getting, and what else do we need to do to ensure that the gaps are being addressed. So there is a real focus on unmet need just now, and I'm confident in due course that we will be closing that gap and providing the services to those in greatest need that require care packages.
Could I just ask, Eunice, do you have staff side representation on that group? Is that an appropriate forum for that?
No, it's an internal operational group at the moment, so we don't have staff side, but we have discussed it at our staff. I don't think we did it on Friday, but we have discussed it in previous meetings, letting people know that we are addressing unmet need. The other thing I would also say is we've done a huge amount of work around recruitment, and we've actually, I think, in our annual workforce plan update, which will be coming to the IJB in October, you will see the increase that we have. The amount of efforts we've done to recruit staff has really been quite imaginative, forward thinking. We've really gone above and beyond to try and recruit staff, and we are seeing rewards of that, and we are seeing people recruited into the area. The problem is we're treading water in some ways because people leave as we get more people in, but we're offering different opportunities for people and to grow our own workforce, etc. So a lot is being done around recruitment of the workforce, around unmet needs, and that's one of the biggest challenges that we've got, is getting the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Eunice. Yeah, appreciate that and the work that you're doing. But I suppose the question is, thank you, Eunice. If I switch it on and off, my apologies. My question would be, is that capacity reducing or increasing? And I recognise that you're doing some work. So is it staying the same, or has it got worse, or is it getting slowly better?
I'm glad to say it's getting slowly better. So Yes, after all that, I could have said that in one sentence. I think as the seasons change, I think in winter we do tend to find that unmet need increases. So we're hoping to be much more proactive this year with all the work that we're doing around our work streams. So we're more on target with things. But overall, our figures are, slowly but surely, our unmet need is going down. But once we've done this work on individual cases, we'll have a much better and confident picture around what our unmet need position is.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my mic was off there. Elaine next and then Lewis.
Thank you. And I think it's just hearing that word of winter and the concept of need again, it's just that reflection. I suppose one of the things I've taken from the report probably is a kind of call to arms again to some of that strategic working we were looking at doing before COVID, but now we're coming through remobilisation, is about that transfer of services where we can to get people home as quickly as possible from secondary care back to the community, avoiding admission. And absolutely key to that is just, as Eunice has described, is that recruiting those absolutely key home care staff members and services. So I suppose it really is probably an ask about Eunice and Sandy. Is there more work that we need to do, that innovation in this space, to try and get some of that transfer of care from secondary care, keeping people at home? Is it time for us again to go and look at the large hospital set-aside work? We spoke about it before. It's a tricky area to work, but is there something we need to do now to get on our work plan as a priority to try and support and innovate within those services?
Thanks, Elaine. I'm going to bring Jill in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Elaine, for the question. I think you will be pleased to know, and I'm sure you are aware of the Care Closer to Home work stream that is up and running already through the Urgent and Unscheduled Care Board, as well as the work going on to support integrated care at home. And within Angus, we've got a very active group looking at all of the 5 work streams to support. And there's a full update coming back to the IGB in October around that. So that will describe a lot of the work that is ongoing around that. Just to give the board assurance, I know we are only in August, but yesterday I spent the day at a winter summit, Elaine, so the whole winter planning has, I guess, formally commenced, and we had the first winter advisory planning group today for NHS, Tayside and the 3 partnerships. So it is very much part of that. It was a focus yesterday in terms of how we can continue to support people at home. And Elaine, a lot of the discussion around the transfer, I guess, of care from secondary care to community-based care, whether that health or social care. We're trying to join that up with planned care because it's actually a really important element of that. So again, I know I'm saying in the future, but there is a meeting tomorrow with both planned and urgent care to look at how we can do that more collaboratively together and in partnership with all 3 health and social care partnerships. Once we've got that, there then may be the opportunity to, dare I say, look at large hospital set aside. Again, it's very much in the forefront of our minds, though, Elaine.
Thanks, Jill. And Alison wants to come in on this too.
Yeah, it's very much what you've just said, Jill, about the relation to planned care. I've got a wee bit of a concern if we focus on this military language call to arms, that we continue to focus a lot on our unscheduled care and not perhaps give the same focus to the waiting lists that are happening at the moment, the resultant deterioration in health that results in an unscheduled presentation, and just the blockages in the system in general around that balance between planned care, and urgent suspected cancer care. And just to say there is a bit of work around the waiting lists. The GPs in Angus are able to now see their referrals, which ones have perhaps been bounced back to them, and to look at a real quality improvement approach rather than people going around the system. What are the pathways that are not working and how do we look at it? So a lot of that work is in an early stage compared to unscheduled care, but I think absolutely crucial because prevention is far better than cure once the problem happens for people. So it's really, and linked with the next paper around our strategic commissioning plan, just to keep the focus across the whole system.
Yeah, that whole system vision is so important, isn't it? Thank you. Are you wanting to come back on anything, Elaine? Or
Absolutely, and just recognising that that getting people home promptly from hospital when they're good to go does absolutely promote that elective flow. And both just an assurance, Alison, that absolutely, as well as my unscheduled role as well as within a focus on gynecology, and we know that we are women who are waiting far too long for operations and procedures that they need. So I suppose it was just that reflection that as Alison with her role in primary care, for sending folk to hospital and preventing illness in the first place, absolutely, I'm sitting across those two areas and recognising it's a really difficult balancing act to try and to keep both running optimally at the same time. But you're right, it can only do it by the whole system working and being aware of the pressures kind of minute by minute across the piece, so that we can get it right and get folk off the waiting lists living well, back to being independent. So absolutely.
Thanks, Elaine. And could I bring in Lewis now, please? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think concerns that Mr. Boyle's already picked up on in terms of the unmet need, but also just concerns around, I guess, the pressures on many within the workforce, especially those that are having to make decisions when, you know, they're perhaps having to constantly be watching their budget and that they don't overspend. And in particular, those areas, those services that have had an overspend, that are to bring recovery plans. So, for example, the occupational therapy service, you know, it states that they've had an overspend, and it's because of ramps being fitted, for example, to people's properties. How can, I guess what I'm asking is, how can they make those savings? How can they put together that recovery plan if, in actual fact, you know, that need is there? You know, how are they able to take decisions? Is it a case that they're going to be having to limit how much adaptations are being carried out? And if so, what impact then does that have on people's rights and right to, you know, a quality life within their home?
Thanks, Lewis. Eunice is going to come in.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Speed, for your question. We are undertaking an occupational therapy service review because we have seen a huge uptake in demand for services, waiting lists, and as noted in this report, there's an overspend. So we're looking at the whole system, looking at how we deliver services, what grade of staff do what roles. We're doing a review and banding of one of the groups of staff within the service to make it people that are working appropriately, working to their grades, being efficient and effective. We're also looking at how we use technology to deliver on some aspects of OT services. Again, it will become more efficient and will provide some savings. We're looking at, you know, where we commission our ramps and all the things, that adaptations that cost, to make sure that we are getting good value for money, and working with our housing colleagues as well to make sure that we are, you know, reducing any duplicate of effort or waste, etc. So those that need these services, that have assessed need, you know, I can assure the IGB that they will be provided with what is required, but we're looking at just different ways of delivery as a way of trying to ensure that we can balance our budgets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to come back in, Lewis?
Yeah, just another follow-up in terms of clarity around the out of hours and the overspend. And is that out of hours? Does that take into consideration social work out of hours that is hosted by Dundee, or is that just completely
the GP out of hours service that links through NHS 24, Lewis?
Right, it's just
I've got scars still.
It's not social work.
No, it's not. That's separate. Thanks. Okay, anyone else got any questions for Sandy on this paper? No? Okay. If we can go to the recommendations on page 47, please. I'm not going to read them out. There are 5 of them there. Can we approve those recommendations, please? Okay, I'm not seeing any dissent. Lois, is your hand up new? No? Okay, thank you. Okie doke. If we can then move to item 8, which is the Strategic Commissioning Plan update. And I think Jill is leading on that. If you can come down to the seat here, thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to come back with the updated delivery plan as we agreed back in April. I think just to note, this is also a fuller update on the current delivery of the strategic commissioning plan as per our work plan. Just want to acknowledge there is a strategic financial plan paper coming right after this, so I guess when we're discussing and considering this paper, just to acknowledge that that's coming behind this paper, because it does play an important part in terms of the endorsement of the proposed strategic plan. I think members will recall the discussion at the April IJB around some of the challenges when we initially presented a draft strategic delivery plan for the new commissioning plan for 23 to 26, and the challenges that were described around that, particularly in relation to the increasing demands, and we've heard that a couple of times throughout the course of the meeting already, but also the financial landscape that we're currently working in and will continue to work in over the next few years. The financial landscape, as well as the changing or the ongoing changing demographics and the increasing complexity and demand for services, was something that was raised again yesterday at the Winter Summit by Scottish Government in terms of a national challenge as well. So we're not different to other board areas or health and social care partnerships. So I won't go through the paper in detail, but just a couple of things to bring to members' attention. Priority 1, we continue to have a focus on prevention and proactive care. We still recognise as a really important part of everything that we do for all services, and we do have a development session coming up next week on that jointly with IJB members and Strategic Planning Group, and I think that will be a really good opportunity to try and have some wider discussions and share some of the work that's ongoing. I think it's been a really active piece of work, a really active priority, and I think it's something that, following on from the last strategic plan compared to where we're at now, has made some really significant and good progress. The other thing just to bring to your attention is the inclusion of information around climate change, following on from the discussion at last board where we presented the delivery plan, and recognising the importance of that, and just noting that a further paper will come in relation to that in October. I think since April there's been a lot of work throughout all of the services with the service leads and indeed with the professional leads to try and work out not just what we're going to do, but how we're going to do it in relation to the financial position, and actually make sure that what we're aiming to deliver is within the financial envelope. I'm not going to deny that that's continued to be a really challenging discussion, and really challenging to be able to identify ideas and opportunities to not just improve services, but actually change and transform some services as well. And that is the level of change that we are going to need, not over just the next 3 years, but into the next 5 to 10 years as well. I think, Peter, picking up on one of your comments in relation to the risk, this is in line with our current risk appetite. Acknowledging that I think we're hoping to have a session before the end of the year to review the risk appetites again. And it's a really difficult one because of the level of challenge around that and the different levels of appetite for each of the different areas. At the moment, we're saying that this is within our risk appetite to accept the current version of the strategic delivery plan, but we absolutely acknowledge that that will continue to be work in progress, and that we will need to continually review that in line with the strategic financial plan and the financial position across ourselves and across our parent organisations. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill. Anyone have any questions for Jill on the plan? I'm not seeing any. Lewis, sorry. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Again, it just really highlight the pressure pressures on the work, on the workforce and staff, especially that are involved in having to take really difficult decisions. And as I said previously, constantly looking at their budget and what they have to spend. Health and social care, social work workforce, and within NHS, a lot of those kind of care core values and the ethos around kind of, promoting social justice, human rights, doing no harm and helping to improve people's quality of life. I would imagine that there will be many who are completely conflicted around what they would like to do, but in reality, what they can do. And I know that this is, because this question, I guess, does relate to a lot of what's within this report. And I just wondered overall, what has been done to kind of support staff and help retain staff as well, who might just, I guess, feel that they're just under far too much pressure.
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Speed, for the question. I think I'll just pick up on one of your questions. Then I'm pretty sure that Eunice will want to come in around supporting the staff wellbeing. Staff are our most valuable resource, Councillor Speed, and we absolutely recognise that across the whole system. As challenging as it is to work in the current climate, rewarding. So for everything that we aim to do, we continue to have the person, not just the patient, but the person, whether that is service user or indeed our staff, at the centre and at the core of everything that we do. In terms of a lot of the work around assessment, it is a value-based assessment approach that we're really trying to take and holistic, and that actually allows us to bring in different ways of working, different conversations with people, because there are different ways of doing things and there's different ways of providing the right care for that. And actually, if we apply a lot of the principles around realistic medicine to a more realistic care perspective, there's a lot of opportunity there that we've got for improvement. And if we can get that right, then we will continue to see some financial benefits from that without finance driving what it is that we're aiming to do and deliver. But we have done a lot of work as well on staff wellbeing. Sally might want to come up to the table as well, but Eunice is going to come in around that.
Okay, thanks, Eunice. Thanks, Jill. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to say that we are very proactive around our staff health and wellbeing, and we've actually got a sub-steering group focusing in on staff health and wellbeing, and we've got a number of actions that we're taking forward, because as Jill says, staff is our most valuable asset, and some of this work will become clearer when we bring our workforce plan to the IGB in October. Just some things that I would want to share with you that we have been working with staff around giving them permissions to look after themselves. We've just produced a poster that's been circulated with it's some nice characteristics on it, and it's just giving people permission to take time away from their desk at lunchtime. Don't eat at your desk, try and finish in time. Yes, work hard during the day when you're at work, but take breaks, drink water, look after yourselves. And that's gone round, and that's something that we all believe in as heads of service and chief officer, chief financial officer. We really practice that and promote that within the Health and Social Care Partnership. We're also doing tests of change about how we promote staff health and wellbeing, and actually our first event is tomorrow afternoon, when we have a 30-minute session just after lunch. So it's not in people's lunchtime, this is time that we're giving you in the working week for 30 minutes to look at your wellbeing, and we're doing it's not a yoga session, it's a meditation session, we can get the word out there, tomorrow afternoon, that people are welcome to come. So we really do value staff. We know that it is quite a stressful environment that people work on. That's why we're doing active recruitment campaigns to fill vacancies, to make sure that staff don't feel overly burdened. We're giving people permission, we encourage people to take their holidays and to look after themselves. So I think we really have a strong culture of staff health and wellbeing within the partnership. So hopefully that offers some reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you. It used to be me doing meditation sessions for staff. I loved that. It's great. I missed that bit of it. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? Just wonder, Chris, did you want to come in on anything around staff wellbeing at all?
I think, yeah, there was just one point Jill made, and I'm throwing it around in my head about, with the cuts that are coming down the line to health and social care services, how rewarding would that actually be for a member of staff to have to make those decisions and bring those decisions forward, because it's people, of course, that we're dealing with, and our staff, as you recognise, are our greatest and biggest and best asset. And as our members of staff see cuts year upon year upon year. They've got an image of how could it possibly be better with less resource. And the crisis that we have around recruitment and retention that I touched on a little bit earlier on is still there. How do we solve that? How do we manage to retain a work that is fairly rewarded for the vital work that they do against the background of continuing cuts from wherever they come or where they're coming from? We've got a harsh reality about cuts and echoing Lois's comments there about well-being for staff who are involved in those really, really hard, tricky and difficult decisions, and then in turn the impact that has on the wider workforce and their own morale and well-being. And obviously I'm aware of the well-being. The council's got a very good health and well-being group that had a lot of feedback from my own trade union when it was set up, from one of our old reps who had a passion for staff mental health and well-being, and that fed that group at the start. But those issues remain and they're still there, and we've got to be really, really focused to make sure that the people who are having to make these difficult decisions and pass them on, and that also includes people in this room as voting members of the IJB, doesn't it, is that their welfare is paramount and looked after and critical to the well-being of both organisations who contribute to the board. Thank you for the opportunity, Julie.
You're welcome. Thank you. Does anyone want to come? Jill? Yeah.
Yeah, happy to come in on that. I think it's a really valid point, Chris. I think part of it is about being open and honest with the staff. So when we're speaking about communication and engagement, it's not just around the population of Angus or across Tayside, it's with staff as well. And we'll have to be able to have those open and honest conversations with staff. But in turn, and I think we heard it as part of the daycare paper, that commitment to continue to engage. We have to engage with our public. We have to engage more with our staff to make sure that we can listen and hear any ideas, any opportunities that they might have, because they're the experts. They're the ones that are doing it day in, day out, and they know if there's opportunities to do things differently, to change the way of working, and we have to be open and receptive to hear those ideas and actually act on them as well. So I think there will be hard decisions that need to be made, and we have to make sure that we've got the infrastructure to support the staff around that. And I think we've got a really good health and wellbeing subgroup that is led by Sally and feeds into the work that Eunice does from a workforce perspective, and that's very active. And I think we will continue to enhance that and make that even better, and make sure that staff are feeling supported as much as we can. And we have a role as heads of service and indeed Chief Officer and Chief Finance Officer to work with our staff and support them as well, and make sure if we're making decisions or they're making decisions, they understand the rationale, the logic, the reason behind those decisions. And that doesn't make it an easy conversation, but that's our approach.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, Lewis, is your hand up again for follow-up? No? No, okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sorry, it was remiss of me just not to thank the work that Sally's led with the service leaders and managers to support the development of the updated plan. So thank you, Sally.
Thank you. And reiterated from the chair. Okay, any more comments or questions at all on the strategic commissioning plan? No. Okay, if I could take you to the recommendations, please. Are we agreed to support those two recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. And if we move on then to item 9, the strategic financial paper with Sandy. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, yes, Jill's reference that these two reports clearly do link, and this very much follows on from the last agenda item. The paper itself is an update on the April financial plan. And because of the way we've actually abbreviated this paper, we've tried not to replicate content where we didn't need to, so the two do need to be read together. We had anticipated, and I think the board would have hoped and anticipated, that we would see a bit of content in here falling out of the challenging work of the development of the strategic commissioning plan and the strategic delivery plan. We haven't got as much of that as we would have hoped for or perhaps anticipated, but we have got some updates that we've embedded into the report, particularly some revisions to some of our baseline funding expectations linked to the current levels of activity. And that has helped close out some of the financial gaps, certainly headline gaps, which were previously about £8 million over the duration of this plan, and it's now down to £6 million. Big caveats against that, though. I'll mention them in a second. The paper also includes some updates on prescribing proposals that does part of a job that we've been asking to do, but not the whole job, and we'll have to kind of revisit that one again. There's an important appendix regarding drugs issues. This is an issue and a risk that's been described in some of our finance papers before. Members of the Tayside-wide Prescribing Management Group, the likes of Alison and others, will be familiar with these issues. We've shared them already with David Coulson, NHS Tayside's Director of Pharmacy, and we hope to be able to bring some clarity to those issues in the suggested timelines, which I think is all about October-ish. But in summary, Chair, we do still have long-term shortfalls. We've made limited indents on that. We have a lot of unquantified risks. They will, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that list of risks is only getting longer, it feels like, by the week. We also have a series of unresolved actions, and that was evident in the last finance paper. So they all come together to really kind of underline again that we haven't got a resolved position. We still have a very challenging position that we will have to address, and that's some of what Jill was talking about a few minutes ago. We have set out recommendation number 3, which talks about just developing a Chief Officer's Advisory Group, all as described in 13.2 of the paper, and that part of the paper clearly says that we will continue to do the work through the Strategic Commissioning Plan and the Strategic Delivery Plan. We will be bringing an update about strategic financial planning to the IJB in December as part of the existing work plan. We will almost certainly bring an update, a brief update about where we are in October in the financial plans. So that's a quick summary of where we are. And it really means we still have this unresolved issue about our financial planning that we haven't managed to solve either during the development of the Strategic Commissioning Plan itself or since we first signed off the commissioning plan back in April. So we have a big unresolved issue. We've talked about difficult decisions that members of staff will have to make in the context of the care that they provide to service users and patients. We as an IJB, I think we've alluded to that already, will still have difficult decisions to make, and we will see difficult decisions coming in front of us in due course. And that's something that we'll have to deal with as collectively and supportively as we can going forward.
Thank you, Sandy. I've got a quick question, just for clarity for myself. Is there overlap between, or significant overlap between, any review of the minor injury services and the GP out of hours service?
So overlap in terms of financial overlap, or just in general terms of the work?
Well, I know there's overlap in terms of work, but in terms of financial planning and, I guess, service capacity, need, all of that. Thanks.
Yeah, so there's a lot of links and overlaps, Councillor Bell, in terms of the work that's going on there. I mean, minor injury and illness units are something that we've been working on for a long time. And even just yesterday, there was a couple of good examples of how they've worked with their minor illness and injury units differently. And that's what we're aiming to do. But support the illness part of that as well. So that's the link with the out of hours, but also from a flow navigation centre perspective with ED and that whole system approach to support the flow of patients across the whole of Tayside, because we have to acknowledge that our GP out of hours service is a Tayside-wide service. So there will be overlaps, but they work very closely together and in line with the national direction of travel around that.
Thanks very much, Jill. Anyone have any questions? Oh, Alison?
I just wanted to come in around minor injuries, minor injury units. We had an excellent report to Clinical Governance Committee recently from the Minor Injuries Service, and it very much is thriving. It's a nurse-led service, and it is quite distinct from the wider out of hours. So it's not, and we have retained a minor injury service in Angus that hasn't been retained in other areas, and we very much value that. There's no plans not to recognise its absolute valuable role, and with the primary care work we're doing around urgent and unscheduled care, there's a key role around supporting primary care and getting the pathways between MIU, the district nursing urgent care, ANPs that we've just employed to it. So it's very much more aligned with general practice and our health partnership services than the wider sort of acute system.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome on page 76, obviously, the continued reporting of the imminent capital funding for Seaton Grove. You know, against the backdrop of in other local authority areas where there seems to be a pressure to close in-house care home provision. And of course, we witnessed that ourselves here last year with Beach Hill. I do note, though, that the paper talks on the fifth wing being used to accommodate specialist care home provision for older people, which again in itself is welcomed. But I have a little worry at the back of my mind is that back in 2020, the fifth wing was going to be used for some quite specific mental health provision. There was seen to be a demand for that, a measured demand, and then a few months later it was found that there wasn't demand for it and that proposal was shelved. We, from the staff side, have been really quite enthusiastic about the use of that fifth wing for mental health provision because it gave some significant security around the long-term tenure of jobs, for example. So the question would really just quickly be, is there measured demand, and is that proposal for the fifth wing seen to be as or more viable than the previous proposal for the complex mental health care?
Thanks, Chris. Jill.
Thank you, Chris. I think in terms of the work in mental health, that was around the provision to support under 65s principally. And when the work and the information, the data was relooked at and reviewed, there wasn't the same demand for that. Going forward and in line with our kind of core principles of supporting people as close to home as possible, then that's one of the reasons that you do see an overspend in the community mental health budget, because it is as a result of providing complex care packages to support individuals at home. So that is still the case. That hasn't changed significantly in terms of the demand for a mental health under 65 inpatient provision. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thank you. Is that helpful? George, I was actually coming to you because I remembered from the previous time.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question probably for Sandy. It's page 76 on charging income. There's a paragraph there on charging income. If I'm reading it correct, we had charging income of 400,000 in excess of what we thought we would get. Now, that takes me back to, I think, a meeting we had, the changes to the charging policy last time, in that what we actually did was we applied an inflationary increase, but also an additional increase, I don't know what you would call that, for the year before because we thought we got it wrong. Now, if we're now facing 400,000 more than we thought we would have, one I would ask, was that decision correct, in that we've made a lot more than we thought we would? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying is that during a cost of living crisis, which we'll all agree we're in, that any increases in charges for service users obviously could affect their day-to-day budgets. The other thing that I recall was that in the report, I think, which went to an Angus Council committee, I can't remember which one, maybe full council, but it suggested that we would probably need to do the same again the next year. Is that still the case given the £400,000?
Sandy.
Thanks, Councillor Meakin. Yeah, you recall correctly. There's two different things happening here, but they are incredibly related. The adjustments we made through Angus Council decisions was where we had, where the inflation environment and the pay agreements had increased in excess of our charging figures at the start of the year. We were basically playing catch-up. We were having to make retrospective adjustments because inflation and pay agreements were running ahead and at a higher level than we had assumed when we'd set some of the charging increases. So we were having to go back and say, we increased charges by 3%, but pay cost and the cost of running services have gone up by 6%. We need to go back and do a retrospective adjustment. So we had to do that. And we have said the same thing is possible as we start the next financial year, because we've again made an estimate for increases in charges for this year, and pay costs may run in excess of that. It's really been quite hard to get that exactly right in quite a dynamic and variable inflationary environment. What we're to some extent seeing here is the budgets themselves have also not kept pace with where they should have been. So it's not so much a case of, we've set the charging right. I think the charges are right in terms of things that have gone through the Angus Council decision-making process. We're saying here we're having to kind of catch up with the budgets. So that figure of about £400,000 has developed over 2 or 3 years, and the budgets have been not running at the level they should have been, and we've just been trying to do a catch-up. That £400,000 is about 4% of our charging income of about £10 million a year, and in the current inflation environment, which is running at 6% or so a year, that's crept in over these last 2 or 3 years. So we are just catching these things up. We really should have had that built in to a previous iteration of the financial plan, but there's a number of factors going on all the time, and that's one of the things when we've reflected on the base, we felt we just needed to reset that one. If we hadn't done that, the charging budgets would have again recovered more money than the historic budget, but we're doing these corrections to the baseline budget still against that overall financial framework that has a £6 or so million shortfall at the end of the plan. So it does close the gap out a wee bit. It's not triggering, I think you're understanding, triggering any policy decision here or any changes in our charges. It's just resetting the budget. I don't think it will in any way reflect any future policy decision. They will all continue to be linked to the costs of delivery of service, apart from the fact we're catching up here. So hopefully that makes sense. In a routine period, this wouldn't even be here, but we're playing a bit of catch-up because of the dynamic inflationary environment.
Yeah, I mean that's fine explanation, but if the 100k now means we've caught up, and I don't know if it does with some of those inflationary things, then when we've got obviously a while to go, but when we're looking at it next time round, that could have an effect.
That will bring us up to where we are right now, but I don't know exactly how charging income will pan out this year. I think the equation, there are 3 parts of this equation. One is the charges that we level. 2 is the budget that sits over there. And the middle one, the one that's probably most important, is what is the cost of delivering services. And the cost of delivering services is obviously going up every year. And we are obliged to try and match the charge against the cost of that service. Now, that's what we'll keep in mind. If costs continue to go up, we'll probably amend charges to reflect that. If the inflation environment can't, the pressure on the uplifts or the future charging proposals will definitely be less. And I suspect that will be the case when we look at things in February or March 2024. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? I just had a little one around the time-limited Chief Officer Advisory Group. Is that for this budget setting process or a shorter period of time, and how many people will be involved in that?
So, sorry, Chair, did you ask a second question? Did you ask how long as well as? How
many people? Obviously, I mean, it's a good idea, but I'm concerned about capacity.
Yeah. So we are, I actually run through until we set next year's financial plan, because we're in August right now. We've got work to do on the strategic delivery plan, strategic commissioning plan. We'll certainly bring an update to December. We'll bring a midpoint update in October, but not a full plan. But we will do a full plan, I hope, for December. But that's really a plan that's meant to be next year's plan. It's not going back over this year's plan. So it almost consolidates where what might change around some of this would be if we suddenly got ourselves into a crisis. But I imagine right now that the time-limited group would meet until we'd got a budget for the new financial year, which will have to address any shortcomings that have come through this year. and ideally would be addressing this plan itself. In terms of involved, obviously, I would be expecting we would leave that at the Chief Officer's discretion. The group is going to is effectively the authority that the Chief Officer already has. It's not going to develop an authority of its own. It's not going to displace other authorities that already exist certainly through things like the SPG. So none of that changes. It's just exercising the existing authority of the Chief Officer. We certainly are not envisaging it being a wide, broad group, and that's one of the examples of a couple of posts, such as the IGB's chair and the vice chair. But as I say, it's only operating with the authority that the Chief Officer currently has. It's not gathering of its own, really.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. That's great. Anyone else have any more? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, so if we can approve. Oh, do we? Sorry, Lois.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just with regards to kind of younger adults who often kind of aren't specifically mentioned within reports, but in terms of kind of younger adults with perhaps quite significant care needs who are perhaps staying at home within the community, or also those adults who perhaps are staying at home with ageing parent carers. And you talked just there, Sandy, with regards to, any kind of new emerging crises. Let's just suppose that, we did hit a peak where older carers could just no longer cope. And we know already that during crisis times and emergencies, dealing with individual cases can be difficult. But what if we actually were dealing with kind of a bit of I guess what is a ticking time bomb? There doesn't seem to be a reflection of that and what we're going to do to, I guess, start to be more robust in our prevention rather than waiting for crisis to hit. And I don't just mean individual crisis, but I mean, something that could really hit us, especially with an ageing population of carers.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Speed. Well, I suppose to some extent the issues that you're talking about, can I maybe just say, when I was talking about a crisis, you've described a different type of crisis, but one that I will come back to. I was more talking about, in the context of this paper, if we suddenly had an immediate financial crisis, and I don't believe from this paper that we will have an immediate financial crisis because of things like the reserves that we've got to support our decision making. But you're talking about an issue associated with care delivery and the pressures put on services. And a lot of those things, they shouldn't come as, aside from individual instances of care, where sometimes that we won't always know those in advance, but the general issue about changing demographics or the need of younger adults should not be coming as a surprise to us. They should be things we respond to in our overall strategic plan, but also in our overall strategic financial plan. And that, of course, is the thing we haven't managed to quite do yet. So we have been aware of these things kind of coming, but we haven't yet made the decisions that allow us to balance our existing financial plan. And if there are additional pressures coming through, we aren't at the point where we would be able to say definitively that's how we would afford to meet those emerging pressures. So we have got a challenge, without doubt, Councillor Speed. And at the moment, there is no clear way through over the duration of this strategic financial plan that says how we can meet all the existing needs or even further emerging needs that may come through. So we absolutely do have a problem. It's not particularly restricted to older people, but of course you are referring to an age group where we may see increased demand over the lifetime of this plan. So we absolutely have an issue here in terms of affordability to do everything that we intend to do in the strategic commissioning plan or wish to do. Is not currently affordable within the resources we believe we're going to have, and we haven't worked out a way through that yet.
I think that question highlights the importance of a fair framework and the paper that's coming up later around the carer strategy and linking in with the carer centre and making sure that carers have plans in place for support as well. But if Eunice, I think, wants to come in.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add that within adult services, we do work closely with colleagues in children's services for transitions. We look at the landscape, we look at the numbers coming through. We've got do a lot of work around the transition, so we can identify young adults that are living at home where there may be vulnerabilities. We're looking at our daycare services, making sure, and that's one of the reasons about the framework that we discussed earlier, about making sure that we can accommodate different client groups within these resources. We've got our learning disabilities and physical disabilities improvement plan, so a lot of work is being done around, how we meet the needs of that vulnerable client group. And we're also working on a eligibility framework as well, just to make sure that those in greatest needs can get the resources that they need when they need them. So lots of work is getting done around this area of business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not seeing anyone else. So if we could pop back to page 65 and agree the 3 recommendations as detailed in the paper, that would be great. I'm not seeing any dissent from that. Thank you very much. And item 10, the Equality Outcomes and Mainstreaming Framework, please. And Jill's coming up to talk to us about that. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Chair. Again, really delighted to bring an update report back following on from the report last year in relation to the work that's been ongoing around equalities, outcome and the mainstreaming framework. I think just to acknowledge initially first, not last this time, Morgan, the work that you've been doing around that to progress that on behalf of the partnership. I think just to draw members' attention to section 3.1 in relation to the compliance and the bullet points associated to that. That details the work that has progressed over the last year, and although it doesn't look like a lot, I can assure you there is a lot of work that has gone into the equalities, outcome and mainstreaming to get us to this point of the fact that we're actually now fully compliant, which is actually a really good news story over the last year. So for us as a partnership to now say that we are fully compliant with the public sector equality duty is really good. I think we recognise that there's always work to do to progress and improve, and you'll see that through the work that we're doing around equality impact assessments. And I know there's been there's a mix of impact assessments as part of the papers from the IGB, so you need to just bear with us in terms of that transition over to the new template, but also hopefully when we start to bring back, it'll be more at the forefront of people's minds when we are doing the EQIAs in line with any project work or any work that we do. And Chris, just linking it back to the question around supporting staff, when we're looking at changes or improvements, then staff are obviously part of that when we're looking at a quality impact assessment as well, because they're part of it. So I'll not go into any more detail, Chair. A positive report to bring back, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Morgan, for all your work. And that line around us being fully compliant was the one that really jumped out at me. So that's fantastic news. And as an aside, I would just suggest if any board members are interested in feeding back on the new template to Morgan directly to you. Is that okay? That might be helpful, just to see if it's working for everybody. That'd be great. Any questions on this report? Any feedback? Oh, Gail.
No, a question, but it's just to say to board members that we've gone from an area nationally where we weren't compliant and a number of partnerships were being named and shamed where we weren't compliant to very proudly, I was able to say last week, and be commended on our progress. So it's very much thank Morgan for her enthusiasm and passion around this and getting us to this stage.
Okay, I would heartily endorse that. Thank you. And in that case, can we approve the 4 recommendations as highlighted in the paper, and acknowledge our thanks to Morgan and those involved in this paper? And we've done item 11, so it's on to 12, the carer strategy now, and I think Sally is coming up to the table for this. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So as leaders in Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, it's my pleasure to present the Angus Carers Strategy for approval from the IJB today. This strategy recognises the significant contribution that unpaid carers make to sustain the health and well-being of the most vulnerable people in our communities. And Angus Health and Social Care Partnership considers that the role that carers played is absolutely invaluable, and without carers we would be, it would be in a terrible position. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every carer, that's young carers, adult carers, for the work that they do. A lot of the work that they do is behind closed doors. We don't see what they do, but they make an immense contribution. At the meeting of the Strategic Planning Group last week, we presented the strategy to them, and they endorsed this strategy. But I just want to acknowledge that there are a few changes that we will need to make prior to publication that some people have pointed out. The workforce strategy link will need to be amended, and we'll also make sure that we are consistent with our references to carers throughout the paper. And thank you for Julie to pointing out that we need to amend the reference to travellers to gypsy travelling communities. So thank you for that. We all know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, unpaid carers had an immense job to do, and COVID-19 really had an unprecedented impact on carers, and many of whom had to increase the amount of caring that they provided to their friends and families. And now, with the cost of living crisis, their challenges have increased once again. So we need to make sure through this strategy that we meet as many of the outcomes as possible. And I hope that you'll see that this strategy is aiming to do that. But the Carers Scotland Act, just to put everything in context, it places a duty on local authorities and NHS boards to prepare a carer strategy, and this is delegated to Angus IJB, hence bringing this paper today. I would like to thank the support of the Angus Carer Strategic, who've overseen the delivery and or the preparation of this strategy. And I look forward to continued working with our key partners, and that includes Dave McKenzie, our new IJB Carers representative, as we deliver this strategy. But most importantly, it has to be stressed that this strategy has been prepared with the input of carers and those who support them. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our Angus Carers Centre, and in particular Maciek Alexander, for his help in helping us to meet with many, many carers across Angus to really understand what matters most to them. And this has shaped this strategy and the delivery plan. But I have one more thank you, and that goes to Natalie Kilroy, our project officer aligned to carers. Now, Natalie, I have to stress, is fairly new in post, but she has just thrown herself into delivering, or not delivering, but preparing this strategy. And so a huge thank you to Natalie. And also we do reference within the strategy some of the progress that we've made since our last plan, and a final thanks to Janet Owers, our previous project officer, and of course Peter Burke, our previous IJB Carers rep. So to achieve the vision of our carers strategy, that carers of all ages are recognised and valued as equal partners and are fully involved in shaping services in Angus and are supported to have a fulfilling life alongside caring, we really need to understand what matters most to carers, and we make a commitment to continue to do that. We need to really help carers recognise themselves in their caring role, and with the help of Angus Carers Centre and our key partners, we really want to do that and help with our prevention and proactive care approach, which we've heard already today is just so important. One of our toughest challenges continues to be in relation to inequalities. And you'll notice in the delivery plan, we make a commitment to try and tackle and reduce the impact on health inequalities to our caring population. So I'm excited by the opportunity to continue to work with carers across Angus to really make an impact and improve their lives so they can continue with their caring role. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on the strategy.
Thank you. And having met Matching Carer Centre quite a few times and twice in the last week, it's really good to see that as a, it's fed back from the other side as well in terms of engagement and collaboration and co-production, and a recognition, I think, that that there's work to be done on identifying young carers particularly and finding a way to support them to enjoy their childhood, their youth, the same as other people do. So, Kirsty, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, I think just on that point about young carers, so we'll very much welcome this report if approved today when it comes to the Integrated Children's Services Partnership. I'm really pleased to see the level of representation of young carers in the strategy, but the most important bit, I guess, is how we move forward to delivery. And the partners that sit around Integrated Children's Services, in their broadest sense, need to be more fully committed to this. I think our priorities will include how we ensure we recognise young carers and some of the other work that we're doing around young people's mental health and well-being, because whilst they're grossly underrepresented as young carers, these are young people that are appearing in some of our other groups of children in need. And particularly in our work that's emerging in terms of whole family well-being and ensuring that young carers are very much represented there too. So we'll welcome this when it comes to the partnership.
Thank you, Paul. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, Lois. Yep.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I've got a few questions, but really wanted to just start off by, I guess, highlighting or bringing to the board's attention a TV news item, a local news item a few weeks ago that I viewed, and it was an older carer from within Angus who was sharing her journey, but most importantly her concerns in her care, in her caring role, looking after her adult son, and just the constant worry around, what will happen when she is no longer here, what will happen to her son, what will happen, should she have ill health and not be able to get him up in the morning and look after his every need. And I'm saying this because I think it's quite a true reflection, and it's an everyday reality for hundreds and hundreds of carers across Angus every day who, are unpaid carers who support, whether it be their son, daughter, their loved one, their friend, their family member. And I think, there has to be a shout out to the Carer Centre who do, tremendous works and support parent and carers across Angus. And I think, the strategy in this report is very nice. Also think it's quite aspirational. And I think what concerns me is ultimately at the end of the day, we have got this unmet need. And the impact that has on carers' lives day in, day out is huge. So I could probably go on, but I am concerned. I am concerned that we aren't able to respond to carers in emergencies, that, carers' health is deteriorating rapidly, those that are providing, substantial caring hours every day. So in terms of the kind of key priorities within the report, it talks about life balance and life outside of caring. And the reality is for many, some carers can't even nip to the loo within a morning because of the demands on them. So how will we strike that balance of ensuring that carers have a life outside their caring role, given the current climate? It talks about within the reports that carers will be supported to take full control of their caring role. And I just wonder, what does that actually mean? I think another kind of question that I have is, is around independent advocacy for supported carers, because often carers, a bit like the deputation that was made earlier, they don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel that they really are being heard. And I know many carers that, you know, like I've said, they can experience their own ill health and they can be screaming out for help and yet are still being left to get on in that caring role with no support whatsoever. So in terms of advocacy, you know, is that funded? Is independent advocacy service within Angus, are they going to be receiving additional funding to support carers, or are they going to be met within the existing criteria? So yeah, I've got a number of questions, but I can't kind of stress enough just how concerned I am for carers, especially those that are, you know, for all carers, no matter how small, it can have a significant impact. But for those who really are on their knees, and many are, it talks about emergency planning. And I think that's how I'd mentioned earlier about our social work out of hours service. I know many that have phoned that service crying out because they've got no support and they're perhaps not well themselves, and there's been no emergency backup, there's been no emergency response. So what does it mean when it talks about emergency planning? To what extent does that actually go to?
Okay, thank you. Sally?
Yep, I'll try and answer them as best I can. So one of the first priorities is that people recognise themselves as a carer as early as possible. And if we can do that, then I think we will mitigate against a crisis from happening. Not to say a crisis won't ever happen, but it's just getting people to acknowledge the fact that they are a carer and helping people identify the support that is there early so that they know what to do if they do have any kind of crisis. We are working closely with Maciek Alexander in the Angus Carer Centre in relation to a new concept called carer influencers. He's really working very, very hard to get more carers from a range of ages to feel as if they really do have a voice. And I think it's fair to say that we, in the past, carers didn't feel as if they had a voice and that they were able to influence any kind of change. But with the help of really allowing carers to come and speak to us at various times, not just within working hours, but to have the opportunity to speak to various people over weekends and in the evening at a time that suits them, we can really help understand what matters most to them. In relation to emergencies, I may have to get back to you on that, Lois. We have introduced through the work that we did previously, the emergency plan, but I would need more examples of where it is working and where it's not working in order on that. I'm afraid I've lost count of the other questions. Advocacy. Angus Carers Centre is not paid for an advocacy. They do provide advocacy, but there's nothing specific within the grant agreement about advocacy. So that's the situation at present. We are taking an advocacy plan to the next IJB, I understand. So there may be an opportunity to a further question about that at that opportunity.
Okay.
Lois, can I maybe answer in addition to what Sally was saying around the Angus Carer Centre and their intention to enhance that emergency plan? And the main reason for that is, like you, I go to the Carer Centre, I've met a number of you there, and actually to me it's really important that people have that information written down. So if there is an emergency, people that are there to support them have that information. And for the IGB and others that don't know about that, we have like what we would call anticipatory care plans, and I would encourage people to use that. In the case of Angus Carer Centre, they call them emergency plans, but to others it is similar to that anticipatory care plan, Lois. So I would encourage any of the unpaid carers, if they could share that information about their loved ones so that we've got that, or Magic and the team at the Carer Centre have it, I would really encourage that.
One more thing, Lois, we're just about to publish a carers information pack at the request of carers, and we have been working with a number of carers to produce that, and so within that there will be information about what to do in an emergency. It's just trying to be as prepared as possible, but I would welcome any examples of where it's not working so we know where to improve.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Dave, sorry.
Thank you. Firstly, I would just like to echo the opening remarks that Sally made and acknowledge the vast amount of work that's been done by herself and those other staff that have fed into the process. It's been quite an extensive, I don't know how many iterations of this report there's been in distilling down the sort of the wide range of contributions to get it to this point. I'm cautiously optimistic, notwithstanding some of the difficulties that have come out in the conversation here, that if the priorities, the 5 priorities that we're addressing, are focused on, that we will see a growth in support to carers within the time frame of this. And I'm also optimistic that we will see a growth in involvement in planning and decision making. I think the delivery plan, I think, is focused, and it's focused on expanding support and targeting involvement. References with the newly established Carers Influencers Group, and I think that, again, I'm optimistic that will emerge as being quite a significant vehicle in engaging, and I know from the early meetings that the group has had that they are champing at their bit, actually, just to get involved in some of these issues, particularly around clarifying process and transparency of some of the processes which have been there. So I look forward to that, and I welcome the reference to it. Just finally, I don't want to express an appreciation for the statement of engagement, which is not something I've seen before, because I think it's an important affirmation of the contributions that people have made, and I think people have the chance to see that that the range of views that have been incorporated, that'll be welcome, and I think it's an important recognition of carers and other parties' input to the process. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. And as Dave was talking, birds that I had suggested to Magic that you and I might like to go and meet the influencers group together. Yeah. So sorry, made that commitment without discussing it with you first. But thank you very much for that. And actually, I think it's absolutely fine to be aspirational, and that gives the board an opportunity to hold our feet to the fire on delivery of that. So, George.
Mine's is merely a comment rather than a question, if that's okay. I welcome the strategy document. I think it's excellent. Obviously, a large piece of work, and a lot of people have put a lot of work into bringing it together. I did notice that welfare rights and income maximisation is actually mentioned. I think I counted at least 4. As you can imagine, I would be looking for that sort of thing. However, it would be nice if it could be included in the Angus Care model. You know, you've got the bands, but welfare rights actually isn't in there, or welfare rights and income maximisation. It would be nice if that was actually included, or could be considered for inclusion in the future. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks, George.
Absolutely, that's a really good point. And yeah, we tried our best to get it right and include absolutely everything. But there's always one, and thank you for spotting it.
Thanks very much. So if there are, oh sorry, Lois is there. Okay.
Are you okay, Julie? If I just come back again, just firstly, just to be absolutely clear, there's nothing at all wrong with being aspirational. I think it would just be remiss of me if I didn't kind of highlight just how the reality of the caring roles and the unfortunate reality that there are carers who are no longer with us or who are currently on their knees right now crying out for help, and we can't get it because of that unmet need. So I really just wanted to bring that harsh reality, and that no plan or report or strategy, no matter how detailed, can unfortunately change those circumstances right now. But I also just wanted to, it was just another observation, and it was on the graphs, and it was around the highest reason for caring role, and the autism spectrum was significantly high in terms of people's reasons for being a carer. So supporting a loved one with autism. And I just wanted to highlight that autism really doesn't seem to, for that cohort of people and their families, doesn't really seem to sit anywhere. And I just find that's perhaps something that can be taken a look at, because obviously it's a spectrum, and everybody's needs are individual and unique to them. However, there are many complexities for people that do have autism, and often it can be really difficult for them to be cared for without support. And certainly often, it can be really, really challenging, and often their journey ends up being sometimes out with the local authority, or perhaps just in a really kind of difficult situation. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, and to highlight again that if we have carers who are not feeling that they're able to influence their own day-to-day lives, we really need to make sure that we're not looking too much at, we do absolutely need to look at how they can influence and shape our services, but we need to get that balance right, because they are crying out around the lack of support currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Would hope that the strategies and plans that come to this IGB are about making outcomes better for people, and however incrementally that might be, and on an individual basis. So we look forward to seeing that come to fruition. And congratulations, Sally, on the plan. And I look forward to working with you in the Carer Centre again as we progress it. So if we can go to the recommendations for this paper, approve the content and the publication of the final following the wee tweaks that Sally has mentioned, endorse the engagement activities, and also look forward to that on an ongoing basis, and a progress update on an annual basis. So with that, if everyone's happy, that would be great. Thanks very much. And we are now on to the final item, which is the date of the next meeting, and it will be held here on Wednesday the 25th of October at 2 o'clock. And with that, thank you all so much for your contributions today, and safe journey home. Thank you. Thanks everyone online as well.
John, could you stop the live stream, please?